Latika, Craig Thomson's defence seems to rest on his belief the investigation was flawed. What are his central complaints?
Well, this morning, Craig Thomson gave the response we've been waiting several years to hear, and that is his defence and his reply to a series of claims about his credit card use at the Health Services Union. Now, one centres, and of course the one that's received the most coverage, centres on the use of his union credit card to pay for escorts. And this happened not once, not twice, but 6 times during his time at the Health Services Union. Now, the Fair Work Australia report is quite forensic. It's about that thick when you print it out, and it certainly details with great specificity the use of Craig Thomson's credit card and also his phone to call the agencies that were later billed on his credit card. Now, he says that he was threatened in 2004 by a rival union official that his credit card would be used to set him up with a bunch of hookers, was his quote. So he's making that claim today and says he took that claim to Fair Work Australia and they ignored it. And he's directly attacked Terry Nasios, who is the delegate from Fair Work Australia, who conducted this very exhaustive investigation, as we know, over 3 to 4 years. Now, that has led to his interview this morning with Laurie Oakes, and let's just have a listen to how Craig Thomson dealt with some of that.
Facts are that it wasn't me. On a number of occasions, on 2 or 3 of these occasions, it's impossible to be me.
No, well, according to this, you were in New South Wales for 5 of the 6 occasions when these transactions occurred, so that was possible to be you?
Well, I was at other places, and there's, again, witnesses that weren't interviewed are able to establish that. I mean, the problem with Fair Work is that it went off on a tangent. It took the views of 2 particular union officials without testing those views, and that's why they're wrong, and that's why when they're contested, we'll show they're wrong. But
it seems to me there's a fair bit of evidence here. It's even been revealed on the 6th occasion when you're actually in Perth when the transaction occurred. According to this report, the escort agency operated in Perth anyway.
Well, I was in Perth with my wife at the time, so I'm not quite sure what they're suggesting in relation to that. For 2 weeks, and wasn't in Sydney within the month around it. I mean, it's fanciful to suggest that you can be in those places at different times.
Craig Thomson speaking there earlier. So where to for Craig Thomson from here?
Well, there are several fronts where Craig Thomson is defending these claims. One, of course, will be in the federal court, where Fair Work Australia will take the more than 100 civil breaches it found in its investigation and put them to Craig Thomson. There separately are 2 police investigations into HSU East and HSU National Branch, and they are conducting in New South Wales and in Victoria. Now, also, of course, Craig Thomson is or was a Labor MP. He's been suspended voluntarily from the Labor Party, and he now sits on the crossbenches as an independent. But very crucially, his vote is still being used to support the minority government. And as we know, that's a very precarious situation in terms of numbers, with the Speaker, Peter Slipper, now out of the scene for some time. So Craig Thomson will take this to Parliament when Parliament resumes not next week but the week after. He's promising to give a 30-minute statement, which he says will be full and frank, and we can probably expect him to be a little more detailed about exactly who he claims set him up, because he'll have the protection of parliamentary privilege, which is something, of course, he doesn't have when he goes on and does a media interview like this morning with Laurie Oakes. So there are several fronts where Craig Thomson will have to continue to defend his innocence, as he is clearly doing. And will it pass the believability test? Well, of course, the Parliament, those in the opposition, will want to try and be judge and jury and try this through the media. But of course, there are legal processes that have to be borne out, and that, of course, has been Julia Gillard's central defence of Craig Thomson, as she has continued to stand by him for so long, until, of course, just a couple of weeks ago. But already, one union leader, Paul Houser's been on his Twitter account. He was watching Craig Thomson's interview with Laurie Oakes and said that he didn't think this passed the believability test. So Craig Thomson will have to convince the Parliament, and it looks like some within his own ranks are already dubious.